Welcome to this March 26th edition of WebeXions. And today I'm delighted to introduce to you Norman Jennings, who's the Operations Director for Hertfordshire Futures. As you probably know, Hertfordshire Futures is the new name for the Hertfordshire Local Enterprise Partnership, but the core priorities remain the same in terms of accelerating employment, enterprise, and innovation. And working with businesses, with government, with investors, and many other stakeholders that puts people at the heart of growth story for Hertfordshire. And today we're going to be talking Get Hertfordshire Working. So Norman, does that give you a bit of an introduction as to what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, that's fine, Ian. Thank you very much for the invite, and more than happy to talk about the Get Hertfordshire Working plan that as Hertfordshire Futures we've been leading on with colleagues from Department of Work and Pension and from the Integrated Care Board in Hertfordshire.
No, that's great. Thanks, Norman. So why Get Hertfordshire Working plan?
Okay, two reasons really. One is, as you mentioned in the intro, Ian, skills and employment are key to our the growth of our economy. If we're going to want to see economic growth, then we need skilled people. We need people who can be flexible. We need employers who are looking to recruit people. So it's important that we make the best use of our labour market, if you like, in Hertfordshire. And most people think the labour market will say that's the working age population and that's who's in there. But actually, we've got a number of areas of the economy where they've got real recruitment issues. I know that sounds strange in the current climate, the cost of living, etc.
Yeah.
But in some areas, they've got recruitment issues. In others, less so. And so it's important that we can do our bit to ensure that as many Hertfordshire residents are benefiting from the growth of the Hertfordshire economy. That's one side. On the other side, it's been big in the news recently, Ian, around things like the economic inactive people out there. And in particular, government is talking a lot about, you've heard it, about this NEET number for young people who are aged 18 to 24. And there's a belief that in the country, that's close to being 1 million young people.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, who are NEET. And so the government has got to focus on how can we ensure that we're helping more people to become economically active in their local areas, and a particular focus on things like young people and needs. So they produced a white paper about 12 so months ago, called Get Britain Working, and what they asked each local area to do, and they defined the local area. The local area for us being Hertfordshire was to lead on developing a local version of that plan. So Get Hertfordshire Working. The key priority on that, I guess the number one target that the government is keen to achieve, is they're looking for an employment rate of about 80% across the country. That's their target. And in Hertfordshire, the work that we've done, we know that our employment rate is just short of 81%.
Okay.
Okay. You're never going to get 100%, Ian. That's just not realistic. But it's those small increases over and above the 80% that will make the difference. So we were asked to develop a Get Hertfordshire Working plan. Like I said, that fits in quite nicely because actually the more we can get people into the labour market, the better that is for individuals, but also for our businesses. And that should help us continue to grow our economy.
I'm going to say, because when you look at the evidence, we can see that the Hertfordshire economy has some really strong sectors. Whether it's pharmaceutical or digital AI, and obviously the films and studios and things of that nature. So, and I, I'm probably going a bit off piste here. Sorry, Norman, in the sense
That's all
that
right.
just because you've just covered quite a lot there in terms of what you've just said. But one of the things that interests me is the infrastructure, which is again is part of the priorities, and it's actually when you've got these economically inactive, lovely phrase that they use. Some of it is about getting people to work, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So in Hertfordshire, how does that fit into
Yeah,
the strategy?
it's a valid point, Ian. When we were doing our research into this, I think I should, in terms of terminology, we talk about economically inactive, and I talk about employment rates, etc.
Yeah,
And they're slightly different things. So when we're talking about employment rate, we're talking about people in employment and people who are seeking employment. When
right,
we're talking about economically inactive, these are people who are not at the moment seeking employment.
right.
And we believe there's probably about 130,000 adults of working age population, working age, which is 16 to 64. I know that's, as somebody who's 66, that isn't, you're still working. But within that sort of range, that age range, there's about 130,000 people who are economically inactive in Hertfordshire. Now that will go up and down, Ian, of course, but it's roughly about 130,000. You can break those 130,000 down into 5 or 6 subcategories. So the highest percentage, about 27% of that 130,000, is students.
Yeah.
So they're deemed to be economically inactive because they're in education, be it at college or university.
Okay.
You'll have a percentage who are retirees, probably around about 10%. Now that's clearly people who have retired early within that 16 to 64 age band. Then you'll have people who are long-term sick, or you'll have people on short-term sickness or short-term illnesses.
Yeah.
And then you'll have the last group is people who've got caring responsibilities. And that may be elder care, they're looking after parents, etc., or childcare. Now, across that, there are probably, we reckon, take the students out of it, because they're clearly students, hopefully, are going to become economically active at some point.
So,
but across them, there's probably about 25 to 30,000 who would be looking to work, or if certain barriers were removed. Now, some of those barriers are health related, so they might be mental health issues or musculoskeletal issues, but some of it will be down to the research that we've done and speaking to people who have on universal credits and things like that, is down to things like lack of childcare facilities or lack of transport. So if you're to your point, if you're traveling from, I don't know, Wellingborough City to Stevenage, there's a train line that goes up the middle of the county, or there'll be buses.
Yeah.
If you're going from Watford across to Broxbourne, then it's more difficult. I know you've got the M25, probably a bad example, but if you were going from Hemel across to Hertford type thing,
correct.
So we know that's potentially one of the issues. So what we've got to do is work with our colleagues here at Hertfordshire County Council in the transport services, to work with them to ensure that where it's practical, there is what sufficient transport is there between, and we've got to be realistic, it's got to be between some of the major towns and cities. Not cities, we don't have cities, major towns and villages, etc. So yes, it is an issue, the going across, but it's probably not the biggest issue. The biggest issues and the biggest barriers are probably health related.
Yeah. And I think that's been getting a lot of focus, isn't it, in terms of
Yeah,
at government level.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it is about, I do, helping them back into an employment and dealing with, a range of health issues, really,
yeah,
from, as you say, from physical to maybe anxiety or whatever,
yes,
there's
yeah,
there's a lot there. But I know from when back in my day of working, mobility was a major issue for career progression, not necessarily to
yes,
get a job, but you needed mobility to actually have a career progression. So it is a very
yeah,
key point,
yeah.
So, um,
And
yeah, sorry, you covered a number of issues there that I was going to ask you about, and the link between health and work, and then employment engagement is interesting one, isn't it? In terms of
yeah,
working
yeah,
with businesses to actually say, okay, who are you going to employ, if you like? Who do
yeah.
you need, and how do we develop skills?
Absolutely right. And in terms of the health related issues, it's also quite interesting. And if you look at um, probably for younger people, mental health is a bigger issue. So anxiety, etc., etc.
Yeah,
And for the older population, then the musculoskeletal becomes more of an issue. It doesn't mean to say they haven't got mental health issues as well.
yeah,
And it's, I think, our challenge is how do we ensure that help and support that is already there. This isn't about, I mean, if government said to us, here's another £10 million, we'd take it.
yeah,
But it's also about how do you make sure, how do you align existing services? So whatever support is going into things like the NHS or primary care, how do you align that with the support that's there for helping people get back into employment support? How
mm,
do you align that with skills support that's out there? Because if you can bring these things together,
yeah,
then you stand a better chance. And at the end of that is employers have a role in this as well.
yeah,
And it's about working with employers to help them understand what the labour market looks like and the fact that there are these people in the labour market who may be wishing to come back into employment.
yeah,
You might be looking for staff. How can we make those two things happen? So it might be about understanding that people have certain needs, and doesn't mean to say they can't work, but you may need to adapt your processes
mm,
and your physical organisation. And so I think with employers, it's about working with them to understand the labour market is broad. And although it's tight, Ian, I said before, we're 81% employment rate in
mm,
Hertfordshire. So it is, in that sense, tight. If you compared us to perhaps somewhere like Luton or something, with maybe 70% employment rate,
yeah,
with if you look at that and you say to them, you may have to flex. It's about how do you understand what do you understand of the labour market and these potential employees, but also what supports they're available for you as an employer to help you do this. And if you look at young people as an example, in supporting young people into employment is going to be different to supporting an older person who might have a musculoskeletal issue. So it's trying to help employers to understand that bit.
yeah. No, it's really interesting, and you just actually touched on funding there. You said £10 million or whatever
Yeah,
it is. So yeah, when we're looking at what is being proposed in order to address some of these issues, because often or not it does come down to funding, but it's
yeah,
obviously more
yeah.
involved than that.
Well, like I said before, there are a number of funding streams that are already there. NHS have lots of different funding streams to support people.
Yeah.
Obviously, from an NHS perspective or primary care perspective, they would like to see fewer people taking up beds in hospitals, to be honest. And
Yeah.
if we can get them back into the community, and the reality is, if you can get people working, it's better for their mental health and other bits and
Oh,
pieces.
totally.
Yeah. If you look at employment support with the county and an organisation called Step to Skills, who's part of County Council and part of Hertfordshire Futures, they've secured funding of about 19 million over the next 5 years to support people who are further away from the labour market back into the labour market. Hertfordshire Futures has secured funding for something called skills boot camps that people may be aware of, because I think my colleague did one of these previously. And that's about, supporting people who are closer to the labour market or in the labour market to either get a job, upskill, get a job, or reskill and upskill in the employment to make sure it's sustainable employment, or you can progress. There are funding that the colleges get, Adult Skills Fund, which means that can support people. So, like I said, it's about sometimes pulling these things together, because in reality, the danger is they sometimes work in isolation of each other. If we're not going to get a big pot of money from government, say there's £10 million to fix that, Norman, how else can you do it? It's about greater alignment. But I do want to just pick up on a point, Ian, around young people, and going back to this million figure that's often quoted. There's an ex-minister, Alan Milburn, who's leading a task force on this. And the great concern is that if you're a young person aged 18 to 24 and you're what we call NEET, not in education, employment and training, in that age group, if you're like that at the end of your 20s, the chances are you'll be like that in your 30s and 40s, etc. I get that. And really, we've failed a generation in that sense. So it's important that we can address it at an earlier stage. And the government's come up with something called the Youth Guarantee. And their Youth Guarantee is that anyone who's sort of between the ages 18 to 24 on universal credits can get support via a number of options. It might be work experience, might be the right option. Give somebody work experience, gets them back into employment. It might be apprenticeships. It might be further education. There's also one called Job Guarantee, and Hertfordshire, which is aligned with Essex for DWP purposes, Hertfordshire and Essex area are a pilot area for job guarantees. And this is basically government providing some money for employers to cover salary costs. So it's salary substitution for employers to take on young people between the ages of 18 and 21 who have been on universal credits for more than 18 months, to offer them at least 6 months of employment. So they're employed for at least 25 hours and the salary is covered. There'll be wraparound support with that as well. Now that is a pilot, Ian, but I could see that becoming a national rollout because of the focus on this. And it's important that we can access things like that. So your point about funding, there are those opportunities. We've got to make sure we make the most of them for Hertfordshire residents, Hertfordshire businesses. But the salary subsidy in itself is important to the employer. But what's going to make it work or not is the wraparound support we can provide to the employer, to the young person, to hopefully ensure it's sustainable employment.
Well, I find it quite a fascinating thing because, like you say, for those that are on universal credit at an early age, what they're looking for is a job that they can build a CV, they can build their reputation in terms of having the aptitude to work, get up in the morning, and because that's not their forever job. It's a job to demonstrate that they have the ability to move on to another career progression. I don't know, but as long as they can show key attributes, they might end up being a train driver, or they might be I'm throwing out little bits and pieces here, but what I find at the moment is that the youth unemployment bit, it's that ability to get a CV built.
Yes. Yeah.
And because when you want to go to a pharmaceutical business or Sky TV or Warner Brothers or whatever, they're going to be looking for people that get up in the morning, want to
Yeah,
go to work,
yeah,
and
yeah,
those,
absolutely.
and all of that helps with the mental health anyway, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah,
and
we
the job support scheme that you just outlined
yes,
is key.
yes, it is. It's without a doubt. It's important because we need that wraparound support, but it's important because we can't do any of this if we haven't got employers on side.
Yes.
Employers are absolutely central to this. And, my one request from this WebeXion is really, if there's employers out there that are interested in this, please do make contact, because we need as many employers as possible on this. But just going back to your point, it is about giving these young people the confidence. It is about, as you say, building their CV. We did a piece of work some time ago now, asking employers what were they looking for in young people, because all too often, it's a phrase I've just heard too many times. Employers would say to me, yeah, the problem is young people aren't ready for the world of work. Yeah. And I get what they mean, but actually I wanted to understand it a bit more. So we asked, if you ask 10 employers that same question, what do you mean by they're not ready for the world of work? They'll all come back with different things. But you know what? 80% of it's exactly the same. They're just saying it in a different way.
Yeah.
And we did a piece of work, and what came out top on that, Ian, just going back to your point about that confidence, that building that CV, employers are looking for, yes, they're looking for people with qualifications and stuff like that, but that's not the be all and end all. It's important. What they're looking for is young people who can show they've got determination, they've got resilience,
Yes.
they've got communication skills. Employers will accept that if you don't get it right first time, that's part of learning. That's what we expect.
Yeah.
But actually, that's if you're looking for a young person, and some of our employers, some of our big corporate employers, the likes of Airbus and MBDA, etc., if they put out a call for apprenticeships, they may get 100 apprenticeships for 20 posts. Yeah. And once they've sifted them, chances are 50 of them are A-star plus students. They're all the same. Then they will start looking at, well, what's in your CV over and above what your qualifications are. If you can show that, you've worked at home with your dad rebuilding bikes and doing X, Y, and Z, those are the things that employers are looking for. And I think it's important that people who are not in the labour market, whether they're young people or adults, understand that it's those sorts of things that employers are looking for: resilience, determination, communication skills, those types of things. Because they'll train you in most instances, they'll give you training.
Yeah, and it's no different if you're going for a promotion in a bit. I've had it looking at CV, people apply for jobs to get the next grade. Sometimes they're not they're most qualified, but they're the ones that demonstrate that they've planned ahead. They've asked about the job. They've investigated the job.
Yes.
They've met up with people who do the job. Yeah. And it's little tips like that sometimes, and that's what you try and do with work experience and things like that.
Yes.
Those ones that want to come in, spend a summer doing the job, which helps both the person know whether they want to do the job, but also the potential employer whether they want that person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And volunteering is another one, doing a bit of volunteering. You need to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and that volunteering you don't become forever a volunteer when you need to be looking for employment as well. But it is those sort of trying it out type things, you said, testing it out for both sides.
For both sides.
And that those sorts of things are important. And as I said, really employers are quite key to all of this.
And that actually is quite a nice little conclusion there, actually, Norman, in the sense that it's a shout out to employers here. We have the people, we have the people who want to work, and those we need to retrain or whatever, or help back into work. So where can the employers go to? from here in terms of what's available from Hertfordshire Futures?
They can either they can contact us at www.hertfordshirefutures.com. On our website, you can find the published version of the Get Hertfordshire Working Plan if people want to read that.
Yep.
Or we have an info@hertfordshirefutures.com, and they can request somebody to speak to them. We have a team of skills advisors who can come out and speak to employers, because I get sometimes with employers it's a bit like an old Haynes manual from the 1970s where there's all this wiring. There are all these wiring diagrams and everything else. Part of our job is to make that clearer. So if our employers are out there, do that. Alternatively, they can go on to HOP, our Hertfordshire Opportunities portal. And again, there's information on there as well. But we would willingly speak to any employer if they want to speak to us and talk to us and ask us questions or seek our help and advice on anything.
No, great. Thanks, Norman. I think obviously from our perspective, Biz for Biz, this video and talk will go out in our magazines. That will be an avenue out to the wider business audience, as it were, that goes way beyond Hertfordshire, but this is a bit more of a Hertfordshire centric topic that we're talking about today. So with that, Norman, thank you very much for your time. I'd like to thank our listeners and viewers today, and to look out for this publication when it comes out in the next few weeks, and then when we'll be doing our next WebeXions on another topic to support business and employment across Hertfordshire and the wider UK. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Ian.
Thanks, Norman.